So usually when people talk about making a massive life decision, especially a risky one or one that puts them in the public eye, the internal monologue is pretty standard.
Right, it's predictable.
Yeah. It's basically a checklist of capabilities. You ask yourself, can I actually pull this off? Do I have the skills? Do I have the time? Do I have the guts?
It's an assessment of ability.
Exactly.
It's a performance question. Can I do the thing?
But we have a document in front of us today for this deep dive that argues that is completely the wrong place to start.
It really flips the script on that.
It does. It suggests the question you should be asking isn't, can I do this? It's, can I remain structurally whole while doing this?
Which is just a profound shift in thinking.
Yeah.
It moves the goalposts entirely from ability, can I perform the task, to sustainability. Can I survive the task without losing who I am? It turns the whole conversation from a question of skills to a question of identity.
So today we are diving deep into a framework titled The Sovereign Feminine, a framework for identity and readiness. And I want to set the stage immediately for you, the listener, so you know exactly what we're looking at. This source material is explicitly written as a guide for psychological readiness in the world of adult content creation.
It is. And that is a very specific, high-intensity environment.
However, and this is exactly why we picked it for the deep dive, the psychological principles here are incredibly rigorous.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if you have zero interest in that industry. If you are a creator, an entrepreneur, a leader, or just someone who exists on social media, this is a masterclass in what the text calls psychological sovereignty.
I'd honestly argue it's one of the most honest discussions about the intersection of identity and the internet I've seen. Period.
Yeah.
Because it treats the self like a physical building.
Yeah.
If you add a heavy load like public scrutiny, monetizing your image, or just intense digital visibility, you need to know if the foundation has cracks.
Right.
Because if it does, the structure won't just creak, it will collapse.
And we see that happen all the time, don't we? Burnout, public meltdowns, influencers who suddenly vanish or completely change their personalities.
Exactly. That is a structural failure. It's not a skill failure.
So our mission today is to unpack this concept of psychological readiness. We're going to look at how this text redefines words we think we know, like innocence and integrity, and we're going to explore the massive tension between being embodied versus just performing.
And the stakes are high here. The document implies that if you get this wrong, if you anchor your identity in a wrong place, you don't just fail at the job, you fragment your psyche.
Just to be clear up front, we aren't taking any moral stance or endorsing the specific industry discussed in the source.
Right. We're strictly analyzing the psychological framework it presents.
Exactly. We're impartially breaking down the ideas. So let's jump right into the definitions, because the source redefines some really heavy words right out of the gate.
It really does.
The first one that caught my eye was innocence. Usually when I hear innocence, I think of naivety, purity, not having done certain things, a blank slate.
That's the cultural definition for sure. It's usually defined by what you haven't done.
Yeah.
But this framework argues that the body is not where innocence lives. It explicitly says, quote, innocence is coherence.
Coherence. That is such a technical word for a spiritual concept. Break that down for us.
Think of a radio signal. A coherent signal is clear. It's continuous. It's unbroken.
Okay.
The text defines innocence as an embodied continuity of self. It's the state where your outside matches your inside. So it's not about what you do with your body. It's about whether your actions fracture your reality.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, you could theoretically engage in adult activities or really any high-risk behavior and remain innocent under this definition as long as it doesn't break your internal continuity.
According to this source, yes. It makes a very bold claim. It states that adult content does not automatically corrupt integrity. Loss of integrity occurs when identity becomes externally anchored.
The integrity trap, that's what they call it. It's not the act itself that breaks you, it's where you've dropped your anchor.
Exactly. Think about a boat. If your anchor is on the boat, you're fine. But if your anchor is dropped in the shifting sand of what other people think of you or how many likes you get or how much money you're making,
you're drifting.
You are drifting. You are not sovereign. You're just reacting to the current.
Okay, but how do you know? Everyone likes to think they're grounded. No one admits, oh yeah, I'm totally defined by my follower count.
Oh, of course not.
But deep down, a lot of us are. And the source gives us a checklist for this called the Agency Foundation.
It's a brutal checklist, honestly. It does not leave much wiggle room.
It really doesn't. Let's walk through it. The first pillar is You must feel whole without subscribers.
And let's be real. In the creator economy, or even just regular life where we track our friends' views on our stories, that is a high bar.
It's a massive bar. It's basically asking, do you exist if no one is watching?
The logic is completely sound, though. If you need the subscribers to feel whole, then the subscribers own a piece of your wholeness.
Wow.
They have leverage over your self-esteem. If they leave, a piece of you leaves. That's not a business. That's a hostage situation. You are held hostage by the audience.
The second pillar on the checklist is, you cannot act from urgency or insecurity.
This is all about decision-making. If you are desperate for rent money or desperate for attention or validation, your boundaries are fluid.
Because you need the outcome too badly.
Exactly. You will say yes to things the sovereign version of you would say no to. The text is saying you can't build a structure on a panic response. Urgency is the enemy of integrity.
And the final one on the checklist, you must be able to stop without panic.
This is the ultimate test. If the idea of deleting the account, stopping the revenue stream, and vanishing tomorrow causes a nervous breakdown or an identity crisis, you aren't running the show. The show is running you.
It says explicitly in the text, if emotional stability depends on the outcome, money or views, readiness is low. It's basically saying you have to be okay before you start, not hoping the process will make you okay.
You cannot outsource your stability to the platform. That's the core takeaway. The platform is designed to be unstable. If you hook your nervous system to it, you will become unstable.
Speaking of nervous systems, this leads us directly into what the source calls the Validation Sensitivity Index.
Yes.
I feel like this section is where a lot of people, regardless of what they do for a living, are going to feel totally called out. It's a diagnostic tool, right?
It is. It asks you to rate yourself on a scale regarding how much power you give the audience. It lists statements like, I feel powerful when desired, or I feel diminished when ignored.
Metrics would affect my mood. I mean, be honest, who doesn't feel that? If you post something you worked hard on and it gets zero traction, it stings.
Of course it stings. We're human. We are social creatures.
Yeah.
But the source is highlighting a danger zone. It warns that if validation regulates your nervous system, the platform will amplify instability. Note the word regulates.
Let's unpack that nervous system connection, because the text keeps coming back to the body. It's not just, oh, my ego is bruised.
No, it's physiological. It's hormones. It's cortisol and dopamine.
Huh.
If getting a like or a tip calms your anxiety, or if a lack of engagement spikes your cortisol and makes you sweat,
You're in trouble.
you are in a precarious position. The platform has become your biological regulator. You lose your autonomy because your body is reacting to an algorithm. You are effectively biohacked by the app.
And that leads to what the text calls identity drift, which sounds like a sci-fi horror term.
It's not far off, honestly. Identity drift is subtle. It happens when you start slowly changing who you are or what you present, not because you want to, but because that's what gets the reaction.
You drift away from your internal anchor.
Right, and toward the audience's demands.
It's like natural selection, but for your personality. You evolve into whatever gets fed.
Exactly. You prune the parts of you that don't get likes, and you amplify the parts that do. And in the context of this source material, adult content that drift is highly dangerous.
Because it pushes boundaries.
It can lead you into performing acts or sharing parts of yourself you never intended to, just to maintain that dopamine hit or that revenue level.
Yeah.
You wake up 2 years later and don't recognize the person in the video.
Which is why the next section on structural boundaries is so intense. The source argues that power comes from detachment.
And detachment here isn't about being cold or unfeeling. It's about being unswayable. The source suggests a hard no list. And this isn't a maybe list. These are things you decide before you ever turn a camera on.
The list in the text is strict. No custom content beyond internal lines. No emotional intimacy with subscribers. And then this one, no revealing personal vulnerability for money.
That last one, no revealing personal vulnerability for money, is fascinating to me. It seems totally counterintuitive because we live in the age of vulnerable storytelling, right?
Right. We're told authenticity is currency. Everyone wants you to bleed on the internet.
But this framework pushes back hard. It says you must protect the core self. If you sell your trauma or your deepest emotional needs or your real personality for cash, you have nothing left that is just yours.
You've commodified your soul.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Once you sell your vulnerability, you can't get it back. It's a product now.
And another boundary is no bending limits for tips. That's a big one. It's saying your boundaries cannot have a price tag.
If a boundary has a price tag, it's not a boundary. It's a negotiation. And if it's a negotiation, the audience will eventually win because they have the money. You have to be unbuyable in certain areas to remain sovereign.
Then there's this exercise called digital permanence acceptance. This actually gave me chills reading it. It asks you to say out loud, my content may exist online permanently. And then don't just think about it, observe your physical reaction.
The somatic component is key here again. Your brain might say, yeah, I know, the internet is forever, whatever. But what does your chest do? What does your stomach do?
Right.
The source says, calm equals integrated. Tight chest, dread, nausea. That equals misalignment.
You must metabolize permanence before entering permanence. That is such a heavy line from the text. You have to digest the fact that this is forever before you hit upload.
It connects to the future self-projection exercise. The source asks you to visualize yourself 5 years from now. The content is public. Everyone knows. Your neighbors, your future boss, your kids' teachers.
Does that future version of you feel calm and sovereign? Or do they feel subtle shame?
If there's subtle shame, the source implies you aren't ready, because that shame is going to rot the foundation we talked about earlier.
Shame is a structural weakness.
It's like rust in the steel beams. If the future you is hiding, the present you shouldn't be posting. It predicts long-term coherence.
Now, I want to shift to the section that I found the most philosophical. It talks about nature, embodiment, and performance. The source starts with this nature baseline. It reminds us that humans evolved nude.
It's trying to strip away the social baggage. In nature, the body is neutral. A naked body in the jungle isn't obscene or provocative. It's just a body.
So the framework argues that shame is a cultural overlay.
Exactly.
So biologically, exposure isn't corruption, but we don't live in the jungle. We live in a symbolic ecosystem. We live on the internet.
Right. We deal in symbols, reputation, and perception. So while nature is neutral, society is not. But the source makes a critical distinction here between embodiment and performance. This is the crux of the sovereign feminine.
This distinction was my favorite part. It says, embodiment feels grounded, unforced, and this is the key independent of the audience. It strengthens when unseen.
That's the litmus test. Does your sense of self, your femininity, your power, does it exist when no one is watching? When you are alone in your apartment making coffee, are you that person? Or does that persona only turn on when the red light is blinking?
It describes performance as validation-driven, audience-dependent, and strengthening only when watched.
And this leads to the fully female question. The source asks the creator to really interrogate themselves. Does adult content strengthen your internal sense of womanhood? Or does it just amplify the external gaze?
It's asking, are you doing this to feel like a woman, or are you doing this because you are a woman and this is just an expression of it?
Correct. The sovereign feminine model described here is defined by comfort in invisibility.
Comfort in invisibility. That seems so counterintuitive for a content creator. Your whole job is visibility. It's the attention economy.
It's paradoxical, but essential. The sovereign feminine is not validated into existence. She exists first. Visibility is secondary.
Okay, I see.
If you can be invisible and still feel powerful, then you are safe to be visible. If you disappear when the audience disappears, you are in danger. You're a ghost powered by likes.
You know, that reminds me of that feeling when you're at a party and you're telling a story and you realize halfway through that you're only telling it to impress someone and you feel that little hollowness.
That's the gap between embodiment and performance. And this framework says you have to close that gap.
That brings us to the risk awareness section, because the document is incredibly pragmatic. It doesn't sugarcoat the downsides or pretend that if you have the right mindset, nothing bad will ever happen.
No, it lists the risks, like side effects on a medicine bottle, leaks, reputation shifts, future partners reacting negatively. But here's the brilliant part. It frames them as structural consequences, not moral failures.
I like that distinction a lot. It takes the judgment out of it. It's not, you're a bad person if this leaks. This is a structural reality of the internet plumbing. Can you handle a leak?
Precisely. It neutralizes the shame. If a pipe bursts in your house, you don't say, I'm a sinner. You say, do I have a mop?
Right.
It treats the internet like weather. It's just what happens.
So to answer whether you have a mop, it proposes the nervous system resilience test. It asks you to vividly imagine the worst-case scenarios. A family member sees your content, a stranger insults you publicly, your income drops to zero overnight.
And the goal isn't just to say, oh, I'd figure it out. The goal is to see if you say regulated.
Regulated meaning? Not panicking.
Meaning, does your body spike into fight or flight? Do you dissociate? Do you collapse? If you can't tolerate those variables without losing your center, the source says clearly, you are not ready.
That's a hard stop sign.
Yes, stability is greater than intention. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if you lack stability, the structural consequences will crush you. You need resilience training before you start.
It's harsh but protective. It's basically saving you from yourself.
It has to be. The internet is an unforgiving place. If you go in soft, you'll get eaten. You have to go in sovereign.
Finally, we get to the final integrity question. This is the mic drop of the document.
It really strips everything away. It says, remove money, remove validation, remove the audience.
And the question is, would you still respect yourself?
It cuts through all the noise. If the answer is yes, your identity is internally anchored. You are doing this from a place of sovereignty. You are the same person with or without the applause.
And if the answer is no, if you wouldn't respect yourself without the paycheck or the views,
then your identity is externally dependent. You are building that house on sand. And the source advises you to stop immediately.
because eventually the tide comes in.
The tide always comes in. It's about ensuring the structural wholeness of the person survives the process.
So let's recap what the sovereign feminine actually is based on this deep dive. It's someone who isn't seeking identity through content. They tolerate the permanence of the internet because they've already accepted it. They have hard boundaries that money can't buy.
And crucially, they remain embodied, even when they are unseen. They are whole all by themselves. They don't need the camera to tell them they exist.
You know, while we've been talking about adult content because that's the source material, I feel like I need to print out that validation sensitivity index and tape it to my bathroom mirror.
It applies to everyone. In a world where we all have personal brands, LinkedIn profiles, Instagram stories, the temptation to anchor externally is universal.
It really is.
We all risk becoming performances of ourselves if we aren't careful. We're all content creators now, whether we like it or not.
The principle of internal anchoring is the ultimate takeaway here. You have to be real to you before you can be real for anyone else.
And you have to be able to close the app, put down the phone, and still know exactly who you are.
I want to leave the listener with a final provocative thought. It's something derived from that embodiment versus performance section, and it really stuck with me.
Let's hear it.
The source challenges you to imagine a world where you are guaranteed that no one would ever see you again. Total invisibility. In that world, would your sense of self, your femininity, your identity, your core personality remain exactly the same? Or would it slowly fade away because there was no audience there to watch it?
That is the question.
Something to think about the next time you feel that urge to post. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.